Welcome to another episode of Pound for Pound Boxing Report, episode 135. I'm your host, Michael. Loaded pound tonight. Joining us, first of all, award-winning journalist,
all right.
Gail Falcadala, Communities Digital News. He's back after a while, y'all. The one and only Jay Deal of YTBC fame. Scorsese, also YTBC fame. Jacob Rivera of Jab of Boxing. Daniel Carpio of The Inscriber. And Gus from Corruption in Boxing. What's going on, ladies and gents?
Good evening, everybody.
Wait. Before we get this going, former member of the YTBC, but new member of the LDBC.
Oh, Ryan said yes.
Yeah. Shout out to the LDBC members. All right. Keep it boxing.
I stand corrected. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Boxing Report, again, Pound for Pound Boxing Report is a live YouTube show as well as podcast and blog that discusses all things boxing. The motto is: when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When boxing is bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns boxing, we will talk about it. If you want to find information about Pound for Pound Boxing Report, one place you want to go to, that's the blog page, P4P Boxing Report. .wordpress.com is the link. Go to the blog page and check the right of the page. You'll find links to find us all over the interwebs, all over social media. Links to find us on Facebook, links to find the Tumblr page, links to find us on G+, the Twitter handle, links to find the YouTube show, links to find the Pinterest board, and also links to find us via RSS feed, Stitcher Radio, Flipboard Magazine, SoundCloud, iTunes, Player.fm, as well as the email address, which is p4pboxingrpt@gmail.com. I need to update it because we're also on Google Play Music, so I will update it at some time to put the link to find us on Google Play Music. Let's get the show started. One main bout we should go to. Terence Crawford fighting Viktor Postol, unification bout, WBC, WBO, junior welterweight titles. And, what can you say? But dominated Saturday night. Had his way with Postol. Fought a bit tight early, but once he really found his bearings, it was all over. Postol had no answers. His trainer, Freddie Roach, had no answers. Crawford looked like an emerging star. 118, 107 on two scorecards, 117 on 108 on the third. But scoring two knockdowns in the process. If there was any doubt that Terence Crawford is one of the best fighters pound for pound in the world, he showed Saturday night what kind of fight he is. Clearly outclassing the second best fighter in the division. Since it's been a while since you've been on here, Dil, I'm gonna go to you first. Your assessment of the bout. Did Bud win by a wider margin than you thought he would? Your thoughts on Postol? Your parts on the strategy of Freddie Roach, who had no answers to me and seemed to not have a plan B. Your thoughts?
Is it just me, or do Freddie Roach just get a paycheck nowadays? It's just he just seems too lackadaisical. He tries to be like the Mayweather trainers that just gamble and shit now, betting on Stephen A. Smith, betting that Postol would knock out Crawford. But anyways, let me get to the point and answer your question, Michael. And I'll say it like this, man. Terence Crawford won this fight 11 rounds to 1. Now, you could say the second round, the third, the fourth, and possibly the 12th were competitive rounds. I still gave all those rounds except the third round to Crawford. And as far as the fight went, as soon as Crawford made Postol become a front-footed fighter, and he stayed at southpaw, and he manipulated the range and shifted things with that right hook. Because before this fight even happened, I think Terence Crawford versus Thomas Delorme kind of told me how this fight with Viktor Postol was going to go. If you saw that fight with Delorme, here's a guy who's taller than Crawford, bigger than Crawford, got more range and reach than Crawford, and he was out jabbing, he was beating Crawford, and then what happens? Crawford adjusted, and he started to land that right hook on him. Well, he did it to Postol. He started to land left hands. He started to do combinations I ain't seen since Marvelous Marvin Hagler.
That up jab, brother. That up jab.
Yeah, man. Like against Hank Lundy, he used the low jab to distract Lundy from timing the range. This time with Postol, he utilized his length to set up low to set up high, and eventually Postol was a bit tentative due to the counter ability, the hand speed of Terence Crawford, plus the side-to-side movement made it harder for Postol to locate. Eventually, it made Postol had to get more aggressive, and as soon as he did, he lunged in and stopped fighting tall. Terence Crawford just started to hurt that boy. And then after that, it kind of discouraged Postol because he has to fight somebody that not only could take away his jab, but also take away his other tendencies he likes to do. And Crawford is very good at changing up speeds of his punches. And he could just trick you with a hook where you think it's just going to be a jab for 3 or 4 rounds, and then the 5th round he'll feint you and throw a fucking left hook out of nowhere, and boom, you get knocked down. You didn't see that coming. And then you'd be like, boy, I better be on survival mode because I don't know what else is going to be coming my way. And Postol, you know, he's a tough son of a bitch, but at the end of the day, man, you just saw levels to this. Like, Crawford's like 3 to 4 dimensional. Postol's 1 to almost 2 dimensional as a fighter. And Postol could beat majority of the guys at 140. Now, could he beat guys like a Barthélemy at 140? I would love to see Postol versus Barthélemy in the future. Can he beat Benavidez? Who knows? Is Frankie Gomez in 140 or is he at 147? I'm just asking you guys.
47.
I think he's at 47. I'm thinking. I could be wrong though.
Last fight was Herrera at 47.
Okay. Anyways, I just like to see Viktor Postol fight guys his size or whatever, or guys who are also athletic or gifted or give them problems because they'll utilize side-to-side movement. But I just think, was this a pay-per-view fight? No. But was this a coming out party for Crawford to fight since the Gamboa fight? Yes. Plus, it was a unification bout. Now he's a unified champion. Now we're talking about him possibly fight Manny Pacquiao. But he should go and fight against the other belt holder. Then fight one of his mandatories. It did set up a big fight possibly against a Pacquiao, Adrian Broner, or whatever. And Viktor Postol, no shit today. I think he needs a new trainer, and I think he needs to learn how to cut off the ring and learn how to fight on the front foot a little bit better. But other than that, I enjoyed the fight. I enjoyed the atmosphere. It's good to see an American fighter with a fan base that could travel well no matter what region, whether it's New York or Las Vegas, wherever. And yeah, boxing won last week, and I saw on Facebook and other social media outlets where people were talking about Terence Crawford, and I'll tell you guys one more nugget. My father brought up Terence Crawford to me. Why up Terence? What you know about Terence? Oh man, he's on the news. I was like, wow. And then like, only Terence Crawford is getting the recognition he deserves, and he could possibly be a regular guest on First Take, other than the Mayweathers and Pacquiao's that we always bringing up. So I enjoyed that, but yeah. It was just different levels, and that's what we saw in Terence. This is Terence Crawford's second signature fight, and since Gamboa and Prescott, I was highly impressed. And when it comes to the big lights, he just shines even further. And I think he could have done more, and I think he got more to show than what he's shown. And that's just how good I think Terence Crawford is. The panel could have it now.
Mike?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on mute. I had it on mute. I'm sorry. I'm going to Gus and Scorsese. Unmute your mics, please, gentlemen. There was a moment in round 8, I believe it was, where Crawford had his back on the ropes and he was waving Postol in, and Postol was like, he did nothing. He began to wave a little bit, and then Crawford waved some more at him, and he did nothing, Postol, and then Crawford smiled, and then he shifted he shifted off the ropes. That was the point I knew where the fight was over, because not only was he beating him skill-wise, he was in Postol's head. Gus, Scorsese, talk about the domination of Crawford over Postol, and to my earlier point about about Roach, I was frustrated because one, the fight went a little bit different. I thought Crawford would come forward and cut the ring off and attack the body, but once he established himself boxing, and he was having Postol come in and counter and control things with the jab, I thought that there would be a strategy in which, a plan B in which Postol would try to have the fight more in the center of the ring, have Crawford come in, and then use his advantages in height and reach to exploit Crawford. But we never saw that. It was like they were stubborn and stuck on the same strategy from jump, essentially making the fight easier for Crawford. Your thoughts? First Gus, and then Ms. Scorsese.
Now, Mike, I thought it was an absolutely awful fight. Just a complete sort of anti-climax. And we heard the crowd booing sort of consistently from sort of round 3 onwards. And I think that pretty much reinforces the point. And the reason why it was such a bad fight is because Terence Crawford surprisingly opted for a safety-first, back foot, negative, purely counter-punching strategy. And it's ironic because prior to the fight and during all of the fight build-up, both Crawford and one of his co-trainers, I think it's Brian McIntyre, they consistently mocked, taunted, and predicted that Postol would be the one to run, hold, and use his elbows. Now, Terence obviously calibrated the strategy, and normally we've seen him sort of historically when he pretty much devises his game plan in fight because he's an extremely intuitive boxer. But the fact that he turned southpaw from sort of 42nd onwards says to me that it was a preconceived strategy from the outset. That is exactly what they wanted to do. Now when you turn southpaw and you know that your opponent's strongest weapon is his jab, then you are effectively, what he was trying to do, he was predominantly trying to negate all of his best attributes. So that and the combination of all of the psychological taunting before, and all the fact that Postol knew that, you know, Crawford was the A-sider, and he was never going to get a decision had it even been on points, a close decision. So he pretty much had to come on his front foot against his game plan because Crawford does not like to fight on his front foot. He prefers opponents to come to him. He actually prefers counter-punching, fighting pretty much at his own pace, taking advantage of his height and reach. So Crawford turned southpaw, and we can see effectively he hurt him very, very early on. And you talked about there was numerous times in the fight where Postol actually, when he was able to sort of negate some of the distance, and he was in punching range, and he was in range probably about maybe 30 times in the fight, if I'm counting. But he refused. His hand was just cocked and loaded. He was just pouring out with a jab, but he didn't throw the right hand because he was hurt. He was worried about Crawford's check right hook, which was landing really well. That in his left lead as well. But Postol now when you it must be extremely disconcerting to fight an opponent who's just moving laterally around the ring like a fly from the opening bell right to the 12th round. So, you know, he must have just been hypnotized. Now, as for Freddie Roach, I mean, I clearly heard Freddie Roach talking to, is it Sergei Petrovich, who works in the corner as a translator, and I quote, he said, "Tell him not to follow him around and cut the ring." Now, correct me if I'm wrong, is that not the correct advice? And the first thing you learn in the amateurs, what I learned as well, the first thing they teach you is to throw the jab and to cut the ring. So I'm sure he learned how to do it in his amateurs day back in the Ukraine. So it's, for me, I cannot attribute that loss to Freddie Roach. That is a loss where Postol is you know, purely responsible for. He showed ineptitude. He was hurt numerous times, and the fact that Terence was the superior boxer, tactician, and puncher, you know, he should have walked him down and tried to stop the fight a lot earlier. And in his post-fight, he said that, you know, he didn't want it, he was reluctant to do it because he was just having fun whatsoever. But when you're the heir apparent to Top Rank, your first pay-per-view, you know, you would add considerable more value, you know, because I don't want to see that. I want to see fighters lay other people down. You know, Prime Roy Jones was doing that. Even James Toney, he was defensively good, but he was, you know, exciting. You know, I don't have to like that. You know, there is a way in which boxers are exciting.
But wait a minute, Gus. But wait a minute. You mentioned Jones and Toney. What I saw from Crawford against Postol was very similar to what Jones did to Toney.
Yeah, but it was far more exciting. He was actually coming on the front foot. Crawford was pretty much on the back foot all the time.
But Jones was on the back foot most of the time. He was moving in the same way that Crawford was.
Hey, can I ask a question to you, the one that's talking? What would you like to see Postol do a lot more than what he wasn't doing, where the fight could have been more eventful for you?
Now, for me, I will say that. Excuse me. For me, I will say that the way that Crawford was hurting Postol, if he would have stepped on the front, put the pedal to the metal a little bit more, he might have stopped him. However, I'm not mad at the way he boxed, based on the domination. The way he dominated, it was, at the end of the day, it was just smart strategy on his part. And I really can't knock him for that. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Gus. Go ahead and respond to Phil's questions. I'm sorry.
I mean, he calibrated a strategy and it worked perfectly. But yeah, it was the ineptitude of his opponent who was unable to come up with a different game plan. Almost, he took the play out of him. Viktor Postol, you know, showed his deficiencies that he couldn't fight on the front foot. So yeah, you don't get me wrong. You give credit to Crawford, but when you're far the superior athlete and boxer and you're able to hurt your opponent at will whenever you engaged, I would have liked him to actually taken him out.
I understand. For me, I was listening to a different feed, so I didn't hear that particular instruction from Roach. So maybe my criticism was a little bit unfair, but still, I can't totally knock Crawford for what he did. Let's open it up for everybody here who wants to chime in. Your thoughts on the back and forth between us. Open up your mics, everybody. First you, Scorsese, and then everybody else.
Yeah, man, Crawford turned him from Viktor Postol to victim Postol. That's simply how it went, man. Postol screwed himself. He went in there and he took the center of the ring from round one. Why would you do that to yourself? You're the longer, taller man. You won your biggest fight of your life off the back foot, turning your opponent. And some don't think Crawford fights well off the front foot. I think he's aggressive, and I think his speed would eventually made the day for Postol and knock Postol off from the front foot. But Postol never gave him the chance. Crawford said, "Oh, if that's the game you want to play, you want to chase me around, have at it." And you also get beat up during that process when you chase Crawford around. I mean, one point he picked the man up and he spun him around on his shoulders like, I'm really much stronger than you in here, but you can chase me all you want. So I do blame Freddie Roach, not because the adjustment wasn't made, because this guy went out there and took the center ring instead of just letting Crawford, instead of boxing basically in the middle of the ring, boxing the circle off angles. It's just a dumb game plan just to chase the much faster fighter, a brilliant counter puncher. He could switch the angle up from his stance over and over again, and then plus his footwork, just switching the angle from there too, regardless of what's going on. Postol, I think Dill called him one or two dimensional. I don't think he is. I think he's capable of doing all those things that he wanted to do. It's just that he had a great fighter in front of him, and it's a lot. I think it's a lot easier to make it hard to cut off the ring than it is cutting off the ring when you have somebody like Crawford in front of you. You're not cutting them off. I don't care how good you are at it, how technically superb you are. You're not gonna do it. He's a general of the ring. And he gets your respect way too much. Postol was respectful. That's what he was. That was the problem there. The game plan was wrong from the beginning, and then the respect kicked in, and he had no answers. And like you said, by that 8th round, come on, man. What I saw right then is another time where he just backed up in the ring. He literally stopped cutting the ring and just walked backwards. And I said, That's it.
I will second and not bother to repeat everything that was just said because it was said just fine. In the post-fight news conference following on that, Freddie Roach was asked about Postol's performance and why the deer in the headlights reaction from him for most of the fight, and what went wrong. What did Freddie think had gone wrong? And all Freddie could say was that they were just. That Crawford was just too fast. He might as well have said, we were not prepared for Crawford to be that fast. I took that at face value when I first heard it. Fair thing to say. He's not wrong. But as I sat on that thought for a few more days, we've been talking about a potential Crawford versus Pacquiao fight. And here's Freddie, who's trained for years, one of the fastest pairs of hands in boxing, and he wasn't prepared for speed. That did not compute to me.
Yeah, that sounds disingenuous. Sounds disingenuous almost on his part.
Absolutely. Once I processed that, I thought, wait a minute, you have a guy in your stable, arguably the most famous guy you'll ever train in your life, the guy you're going to go to your grave being known for, who's lived on speed his entire career, and you weren't ready for that? Well, whose fault is that? And was it you, Gus, earlier that said it might be time for somebody to get a new trainer?
It was Dill.
Yeah, Dill. Well, good. Yeah, good on you, Dill. I think the world of Freddie Roach, but having said that, he is shifting a lot more of his day-to-day business in the gym to Marvin Somodio. I like Marvin. Now, Marvin's been a great student and great assistant to Freddie, but it does make you think twice. And if anyone came to me and had their choice of any trainer they wanted, I'm not sure Freddie Roach would be my first recommendation right now.
The problem is, Gail, it's too late.
Right, it is too late. Hopefully, Postol should not panic. That's only the first loss on his record. He does still have a lot to offer. And unfortunately, like a lot of Eastern European fighters who come out of an amateur system and don't pick up the nuances of the professional skills, they do tend to be fairly one-dimensional. They need the good ones, the ones that do make a good transition, learn the aggression and learn the sort of ring generalship and movement that you see in guys like Lomachenko, Kovalev, and Golovkin. Postol hasn't, for whatever reason, picked that up. And he needs to find someone who can either impart it to him or this is going to be the limit of his skill set. he still has plenty of skills, but he isn't at the elite skill level. It's just that one notch up where Crawford and just a handful of other guys are sitting right now.
The difference between a good fighter and a potential great fighter, in other words.
Absolutely, yes, because we can all name off the great fighters currently in the game right now. We think of Chocolatito, we think of Golovkin, we think of Kovalev, we think of Andre Ward. Some of you think of Rigo, and he's looked pretty good lately.
Could I ask a question?
Postol didn't take the stair step up this weekend to that level.
Could I ask a question, Gil?
Yes.
My question to you, sweetheart, would be who will win between right now, for what you've seen, Francis Barthélemy or Viktor Postol, stylistically going into a fight?
Wow, that's a very interesting question. You know, the version of Postol we saw Saturday would lose to Barthélemy.
That's exactly
the version we saw against Matisse would win.
It's all about who dictates range, and it's all about how fast Barthélemy really is. I think speed is one of Postol's biggest weaknesses of him getting exploited. But that's my opinion. Maybe you guys could correct me and teach me something, but that's what I see in that ring.
Let's bring Jacob and Daniel into this discussion. Your thoughts on the fight and your thoughts on the back and forth between all of us here.
I mean, I mean, a lot of things, good points have been brought up. I didn't think it was a terrible fight. I mean, it went down as a 50-50 fight. I think with most people, and I wasn't able to put my predictions in last week, but I did write about it, and I did have Postol winning a very close decision. But I did say I wouldn't be surprised if either man won. I didn't think anybody was going to get knocked out. But I think there isn't enough credit. I think one of the things that I saw the most of was once Crawford took over the fight, about that 5th round, 6th round, right around there, a lot of people were discrediting Postol as, oh, well, he's not that good, and so this is not a signature win because of how wide the match became. I still think Postol is a good fighter. I think Crawford just was able to do much more, and whether it was pleasing to the eye for people that want to see knockouts or wanted to see him push it and finish the fight, the fact is the name of the game is to win, and you don't have to take risk all the time, especially on that level. And that's his prerogative. I mean, Floyd Mayweather is a perfect example, I think, of someone who is very calculated, who I'm not a big fan of, but I respect his style and his skill and how calculated he is in trying to get the win. And if that opportunity opens up for him to be able to knock out someone, then he'll do that. But I mean, I think it's a solid win for Crawford. I do think that Freddie Roach should be responsible a little bit for the performance of his fighter, because I think maybe Gail mentioned earlier, I mean, when you're training your fighter and you know who you're going to fight, and it's not like a 2-week notice thing, there was a lot of talks about, they're bringing in southpaws, to train that style, because we know Crawford likes to switch it up. But you should be ready for anything that's going to be thrown at you. All the tape you watch, everything you know about your fighter, and also, to that point, have a backup plan for everything. Postol and Freddie Roach didn't seem to have a backup plan. Yeah, he might have told his fighter to do something, but you got to do more than that as a trainer, in my opinion, than just tell him or get it translated. You got to get passionate in your corner. I know that's not the type of trainer Freddie is, but I mean, sometimes you got to get a little bit more passionate and say, hey, we're losing this fight. We need to do something. We need to change something. And I think Postol, he does has a very good jab, and he kind of gave up on that, I think, and he kind of, and maybe he was mesmerized or whatnot in the movement, but he kind of gave up on that. He kind of gave up on the body punching, and he was just like in desperation mode in a sense, and especially in the end where he was just trying to bring it at the last minute, and he got docked a point because he was hit behind the head. But I mean, hats off to Crawford. Crawford did his job. He's legit, and he deserves to get all the credit, and his team deserves to get all the credit that they got.
Daniel?
No, sorry. Yeah. The main thing that you can draw from this fight is when I keep thinking about it. Like I said, I've had a few days to think about it. You and me talked about it, Mike, the night afterwards, and we spoke about it on Monday on my show. The more I think of it, the more I'm mesmerized the fact that all Terence Crawford really had to do to defuse Viktor Postol was take away the jab, which is pretty much what he did. He took away the jab with movement, and it frustrated Postol to the point where he couldn't even do a backup plan. Now, I agree with them in a certain sense. Yeah, some of that does fall on Freddie Roach. You have to have a plan B. You have to have some type of backup in mind, no matter how frustrated you are. But at the same time, Terence Crawford showed you that he doesn't just always fight aggressively. He can tactically fight. And I think people got used. I think the main reason why they were booing it, and like I said, I did notice the boos too, Gus. The main reason I think a lot of people boo was because we're starting to get used to that Crawford that had a mean streak. That after he toys with you for a couple of rounds, it just goes after you because you angered him somehow. He didn't do that. Up to the 12th round, he didn't do that. But what he did do, and it's one thing that I think he does once he figures somebody out, is switch southpaw. And he did that a minute into the fight and never switched back to orthodox. To me, that speaks volumes to how fast Terence Crawford can evaluate fighters, can value risk, and then know when to strike, because those punches that he was coming back with Postol, when Postol did try to land, were beautiful. And for the discussion you guys were having, and I think a lot of we're at the stage, unfortunately, in the sport where in other words, the only way to get the casuals back in is we have to show them blood and guts. We have to show them knockouts. It's pretty much the same adage that's been around boxing since its inception. And people felt that Terence Crawford was denying them a knockout because you could tell by the 5th round when, you can question one of the knockdowns, but when Viktor Postol was knocked down twice, you can tell that Terence Crawford, literally, if he felt like it, could probably gone for the knockout against Postol whenever he wanted. But he chose not to. That just said, that teaches about patience, that teaches an appreciation to the effect of your opponent. Yeah, your opponent may not have power, but your opponent also is a pretty high skill set, so you can't take him leniently. As far as I think what Gil mentioned when it comes to Postol finding somebody, probably maybe leaving for Freddie Roach camp, it depends how much you have to do it. It depends. There's sometimes some fighters that are just who they are. It's like unfortunately, what I'm seeing now with Joel Diaz and Provodnikov. As much as Joel Diaz wants to produce more defense than Provodnikov is just Provodnikov. Maybe Postol is just Postol. And unless somebody like Armor Samudio comes in and starts infusing defense into his game plan, that's going to be, unfortunately, a big reputation when that's going to follow Freddie Roach now, because his track record with fighters has not been too exemplary lately, including with Pacquiao. So, and that's what he needs. He needs the big-name clients to show that he can win and against top-level competition. And so far, he hasn't shown that, and that should worry a lot of people in the wildcard gym, because eventually, if enough people notice that, people just stop coming.
Hey, Mike, I want two things I wanted to speak on the boredom part, about people being bored or hardcore fans being bored. But one thing first, I I remember an article came out with Bob Arum, Klimas were in the same article. It said HBO wanted to throw up when they heard Lomachenko's name and Postol's name, and then a few hours, an article came out that Postol wanted Crawford in 2 or 3 fights. And I take from that he never wanted no parts of Crawford until he was ready for that. And I asked myself about this game plan that was horrible for him to take the center of the ring. I think that's the only way he felt he didn't get knocked out. If he let Crawford come on the front foot, even Matisse, who's not as skilled as Crawford anywhere in the ring, put a whooping on him at time while he was fighting his best game plan. So I think that taking the center of the ring was saying hopefully Crawford concedes that he can be the dancer, the smooth guy, and the beating ain't that exhausting. That's what I take from that. And as far as being bored, I'm a psychology major. And when I see a grown man that does this sport for a living and Postol, a top fighter, depending on who he's in the ring with, I guess we could say. If he's in the ring with Terence Crawford, no, he's not a top fighter. But if he's in the ring with Adrian Broner, I think she win the fight. If he fights the way he fought in the Matisse fight. Or a lot of 145-pounders for that matter. But to see a man that does that job every day, mentally beaten, and another guy taunting him, hitting him when he wants to, punching him, throwing him all the way across the ring, basically. Picking him up on his shoulders. I can't be bored with that. I just can't. I can't be bored with that. It's nothing about that boring to me.
I'm going to go back to you. I'm going back to you, Gus. I understand your position and I respect your position, essentially saying that Crawford could do more. The problem that I have is people are taking that, not just using it saying he's boring. Okay, fair enough. You want to say that, fine. I disagree. The backlash that I saw, particularly on my timeline on Twitter, post-fight, was that it wasn't that just Crawford was boring, was that Crawford was overrated. He's not that good. That Postol is a bum. I'm sure you're not saying that, but in this discussion after the fight about Crawford and about Postol, your response to the folks who not just say that they're disappointed in Crawford, he could have done more, but the fact that they want to go that extra step and denounce him as a talent. You there, Gus?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The folks who are almost dismissive of his ability are not only neolithically incompetent, but they just don't know boxing whatsoever. I mean, I've watched Terence Crawford since for a very, very long time. You know, I'm a student of the game, and you know, he is and has been an exciting fighter, and he was even in the amateurs as well. He has the ability to fight on the front and back foot. We've seen fight orthodox southpaw. He can lead. He can counter. He's got the reflexes of a cat that's probably been injected with steroids.
What did you call him last week? A coiled snake with his hood open?
No, that's Rigondeaux.
Oh, Rigondeaux. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And on top of that, he's got power. So when you've got a fighter with multifacets, so many tools that can adapt to any situation, almost like a chameleon, that's a difficult proposition for any fighter at any weight to have that many skills. And on top of that, he's got a brain, he's got a CPU that has not even been introduced by Intel so far. So you have everything. He has the complete package. Yeah, we've seen his chin tested a little bit before by smaller fighters, but he recovers and he's able to still execute his game plan and win, even when he's aggressive. And we saw that with Hank Lundy. because that was a personal fight. You know, Lundy was taunting him for 2 years on social media whatsoever. So we saw the nastiness coming out of him. But so no, there's no question of his ability whatsoever. But my point is that when you're far the superior athlete and you have the ability, and we saw it in the co-main event where you've got 2 undefeated fighters who was fighting for a vacant title, and one fighter just not dismissing absolutely everything about the other's reputation, but standing there trading with him, you know, that's what I like, Mike. That's my proclivity, you know. So
I agree
Fair
with him.
enough. Fair enough.
With him, man.
Fair
So,
enough.
you know, look at you know, I mean, look at the potential. You know, when you've got fighters fighting, all right, you've got the youth and the enthusiasm sometimes taking over, and we were speaking a little bit about that when we were talking about Gooseman last week. Mike, you were saying that was he a little bit too excited being in his first title fight,
Yes.
hence being a little bit reckless initially, but you know, there may be a combination of that, but this fight, as I said, you know, maybe it's his first pay-per-view. You know, he'll learn. He's got to understand that it's the marketability factors. You know, it's a pivotal transitional period for boxing, where boxing needs a new marquee star, and he definitely is the heir apparent. You know, in American boxer as well, who has everything. You know, a very good narrative behind him in terms of his upbringing and where he's from in sort of Nebraska. So, you know, maybe, you know, that emphasis on saying that, look, I can, you know, propel myself to that next level by putting on the masterclass, you know, that would have just accentuated the whole thing. And I think he had the ability to do that, but you know, maybe he had too much respect for Postol, saying, look, I don't want to try and risk it, and that's fair enough. I mean, I got no problem with that. As I said, I mean, it was a masterclass, but I felt he was so dominant he could have taken him at will. That's just my opinion.
Let's open it up and talk about the future here, starting with Gail and Dill. The future for Terence Crawford. A lot of people have been talking about Pacquiao in terms of a future opponent. I'll say it here, as I said, both on Wiggy Boxing and Daniel's post-fight show. A year ago, I thought Crawford would beat Pacquiao, and I think that I'm stronger in that thinking right now after this fight. I've also heard possibility that Crawford should unify the division, fight another champion, maybe fight somebody else at 47 like a Thurman. First Gail and then you, Dill. Your thoughts on the future of Bud Crawford?
The future's so bright. I hope he puts stock in a sunglass company. He's the sky's the limit. You know, he is the first African American to headline a pay-per-view since Floyd Mayweather, which is an astonishing statistic to me. He is a lot of people are riding on his fortunes. Top Rank certainly is, HBO certainly is, and he's a bankable star with the proper care and feeding. And I don't think that route lies through Manny Pacquiao for anybody involved. I just think that is a terrible idea. I could see him fighting someone like Jesse Vargas. It makes for a all-American fight. You have a Mexican-American involved. You've got a belt involved. It makes a ton of sense. It's a makeable fight. There's no promotional firewall between them. And to his credit, Jesse Vargas seems willing, you know, to go to a dance with anybody. So good for him. Reward him for it.
Dill?
I think against Pacquiao, he can win it due to his reach, his range, his counterpunching ability, his side-to-side foot movement, and he can fight southpaw with Pacquiao, which will make Pacquiao have to fight a little bit more honest. And plus, he's a puncher. He'll be really the first puncher Pacquiao has fought since Marquez. I don't really count Brandon Rios as a puncher unless you're close range with him. So, with that being said, I just think the fight with Pacquiao would make a lot of sense if he could not only beat Manny Pacquiao, but knock him out like Marquez did. If he does that and do it on a pay-per-view, then we have an emergent new superstar in boxing because the torch would have been passed. And then he done something what Mayweather didn't do. He knocked out the man that people revere so much. But it was supposed to be Mayweather that's supposed to done that last year with the most expensive pay-per-view of all time so far. And it'll get inflated again maybe one day. But the point is, Terence Crawford should take on that fight with Manny Pacquiao. And I think he got a lot of tools in his toolage to win that fight. Now, Pacquiao could give Crawford fits by, utilizing angles, hand speed, footwork. But I think, unlike Timothy Bradley, Terence Crawford has better balance. He has just as much reach. He can confuse Pacquiao, and I just think he has more ring awareness and he got more power. And I think he could walk down Pacquiao a lot better. And in exchanges, even if Pacquiao stuns him, I think he could stun Pacquiao just as much. And Pacquiao should watch out for either the left hook or the right hook. Yeah, Crawford is a good guy changing speeds and setting up shots. And what's the best way to land stuff on Pacquiao is when you change the speed on your shots. And Crawford is good at feinting just as much as Timothy Bradley was. I just think Crawford is a better boxer than Timothy Bradley. Timothy Bradley, I take nothing away from him. He's my favorite modern fighter of today. But at the end of the day, Manny Pacquiao hasn't fought a puncher in a while, and if he fought Terence Crawford, who could box and could punch you and could stay in the pocket if he has to, and Manny Pacquiao struggles against very thorough and very elite counterpunchers. So that'll be a hell of a fight. It'll be like 55-45. I favor Crawford. Now, can Pacquiao pull out the win? Of course he can. He's just Manny motherfucking Pacquiao, but would I put my money on it? I would hedge it, but more likely, most of my money go on Terence Crawford. That's where I see it. Now, for the future of Crawford, other than the Pacquiao fight, I would like to see him become undisputed, go up, fight Danny Garcia. That'll be pay-per-view, box office, whatever you want to call it. Hell, if he still have a high stock, fight Sean Porter next or Keith Thurman. Him and Keith Thurman would be a 50-50 fight because they both got high ring IQ, but their weaknesses are also comparable too because they both don't have good head movement. But Crawford could go to Thurman's body. Thurman could counterpunch and take away just as much what Crawford likes to do, make Crawford fight on the front foot. It'll be a back and forth, good dancing partner type of fight. Crawford versus Errol Spence. That'll be a dog versus dog, dog-eat-dog world type of fight. And that's just gonna be who's gonna execute the most and who got the more will. That's who's gonna win that fight. But overall, Terence Crawford, he's at the position and his performance was so good that you just want to see him in nothing but big time fights. And that's all we ask for a fighter to develop himself, where we can say he earns himself for these big time fights more so than these stiff display showcase mismatches. If you get where I'm coming from. That's what I gotta say about Terence Crawford's future.
Jacob, Daniel, Scorsese, Gus, the future for Bud Crawford.
I think it's pretty obvious that the top rank is, even if Manny comes back, we know it's probably not going to be for long term, especially if he gets knocked out or loses or something, something like that. So they have to hang their hat on a star, and Terence Crawford has the crowd. I think Daniel said it earlier, where they'll follow him, or I can't remember who said it, but they'll follow him anywhere. Whether it's New York, Vegas, of course Omaha. So that's a good thing. I don't know what the numbers are on this pay-per-view, but I think that the attendance was pretty strong there, and the sky's the limit for him. I do think though that there's still dangerous fights out there for him. I think that Pacquiao fight, I know a lot of people probably disagree, but I think that's a dangerous fight. And I don't know if it depends on what Manny Pacquiao comes in. If it's a motivated Manny Pacquiao and not just picking up a paycheck, then that could spell trouble. But I like Gail's suggestion of Jesse Vargas because I always want to see him get his ass kicked. And I think he has the discipline to do so much. So I think again, the sky's the limit for him. Hopefully, Top Rank has been very good about kind of moving fighters along at a good pace. So hopefully they do that with Terence Crawford, and I'd like to see him unify the division. I mean, that'd be great, and then he can move on.
Scorsese, Gus.
Terence Crawford. I think y'all know the name. I'm gonna say here. I'm on the screw Pacquiao train. I don't like these in my free time boxers. If you don't do it, do it. If you can't do it, go away, because you take away credit for the guys that beat you. You start hearing, oh, he was 37, he was doing this, he's been out the ring, blah blah blah. I don't want to have those discussions. I know those are the biggest fights and the biggest money fights, but as a boxing fan, I can just say the biggest money fights don't always excite me. It's a good fight. It's things like two. It sounds funny saying, but it's two division champions at 140 pounds. Actually, Ricky Burns is one too, but Crawford has beaten Burns, and I really don't care if he fights him again, even if it's a unification. I really don't need that. But Orozco and Bartholomew are supposed to be getting together for the WBC 1 and 2 to see who the mandatory for Crawford is. So he have one fight and then it's mandatory, and I'm hoping him and Bartholomew can get in the ring together. That's my favorite fight at 140 pounds, and Postol could fight maybe I think his name is Trunowski. If I'm pronouncing that wrong, forgive me. But yeah, that's nice for me right there. Bartholomew, Crawford, Postol, Trunowski. If he does fight Manny Pacquiao, I would like to see Manny Pacquiao try to get those three 140-pound belts that he got, because he's the Ring TV champ, the WBO and the WBC champ. So I don't want to see him give up legacy just to go to 47 when he's not ready to go to 47. If he's still able to make 40 and he's making it healthy and he hasn't taken the fights that I want to see there yet, I would like to see Crawford stay at 40. And see who the best is there. Maybe Trunowski beats Postol. He can get a Trunowski and Bartholomew fight. But if he got that one in the meantime fight, he's gonna have to take some lackluster fight for one fight. If he doesn't get Pacquiao, and I don't see him Pacquiao going to 40, and I hope he don't go to 47 for Pacquiao. I'd rather see him keep the legacy right there at 40, because I think the WBO would make him drop that 140-pound title, and that ain't cool.
Gus, Daniel, your thoughts on the future of Terence Crawford?
Part of it depends on how Crawford is as a person. The thing about, and like I said, we actually spoke a little bit about this, Mike, after we did the post-game show. Unfortunately for Crawford, in a lot of ways, he's very introverted. And unfortunately, this is a sport where you need to be extroverted a lot of times to be marketable, in a way. Now, but unfortunately what's happening now, and this could actually hurt Crawford in the future, is his crew's unfortunately making that up for him. There was an incident apparently between Brian McIntyre and Steve Kim where Brian McIntyre did not like the fact that he didn't think Crawford's fight with Gamboa was really good. Steve Kim called Gamboa a blown up junior lightweight, and apparently the discussion degraded from there. I personally take it as when you know somebody that a lot of us, I think up here grew up, we know the one guy in the crew when we grew up that you know is gonna make it. He has it. So you as a friend are willing to protect that. That's probably what wound up happening. But that might hurt him in the future down the line. That, for me, to Crawford to grow, he has to break out of his shell a little bit. As far as the action in the ring, unfortunately, I think to Gail's dismay, Bob Arum's wish, I think, is to do a WWE style passing of the torch. Now, in pro wrestling, I think a lot of times, like the old, like legendary wrestlers, when they want to pass the torch over to a young guy,
like when
they lose them.
Like when Hulk Hogan beat Andre the Giant back in the old WrestleMania.
Yep. Yeah, you lay down for the new guy. That's what Arum wants. Yeah, that's what Arum wants.
Just that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
But that's what he wants.
Yeah. Well, let's hope somebody advising Manny saves him from himself before he does something that crazy. On the other hand, Manny and his people, his whole team, including Freddie and Bob, are all very loyal to each other, which is admirable. I'll give them that. But nobody in boxing wants to leave on a loss. The truth is, Manny should stay retired, but we knew the minute the Bradley fight was over, no matter what was actually coming out of his mouth at the post-fight news conference, that he wasn't retired. It was a ridiculous display. The funny thing to me in all this, and all the comments about Jesse Vargas are kind of making me laugh. Jesse Vargas is the one guy everyone wants because nobody fears him, but he's got a belt. So, but then he always seems to have a fight fall through at the last minute. The one guy who really got screwed over in the whole, Brooke Golovkin deal was Vargas, who got left without a dance partner. So,
yeah, but some of that's his own doing, though, because didn't he want more money? I mean, if you're pricing yourself out of a fight, then that's also on you.
Well, when the currency that you're counting on loses 50% of its value, I can see why he would do that.
Yeah, and Vargas is being asked to go over there, and he's a young guy. He's got to think about it. I think in his case it was more a matter of they didn't jump quickly enough, and the whole rest of the issue, with Eubank, it just fell into Brooks' lap, and he decided to go with the bigger thing, the sure thing, since Vargas seemed to be quiet, perhaps was seen as waffling. I think he would have signed, frankly. I think it would have been a go. But, he got smoked out. And, Jacob, I'm kind of wondering what Jesse ever did to you. And I'm saying that laughing. But, he's really a guy holding some cards because he's got that darn belt.
He does. That's the issue. He does. But that's the thing about it, Gail. There's two scenarios at play for Terence Crawford. Like I said, and they all lead to Pacquiao. The first scenario is they fight in November at 140 for Crawford's belts. At this point, you can make the legitimate argument that Crawford would win, and Arum gets his passing of the torch, and then Manny can ride off into the sunset. Well, after next May, unfortunately, then he can ride off into the sunset.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Then the other scenario is Manny fights Vargas, wins back the belt that's pretty much has been his for the past 5 or 6 years, loses it to Floyd in May, and then gets sacrificed to Crawford around November next year.
The only problem with that is in the first scenario, Pacquiao gets devalued too much for anyone to care about Mayweather-Pacquiao 2, which is by far the bigger money than Pacquiao-Crawford. And in the second scenario, which I think is more likely, I don't see the third fight happening because once he loses to Mayweather, again, nobody's going to care. But Arum can't screw up. If there is really going to be a Mayweather-Pacquiao 2, Arum cannot devalue Pacquiao because that's where the big money is. all other fights aside, would pale in comparison. Speaking of which, let me just add, I think it was Jacob that mentioned it looked like the attendance with the MGM for the Crawford Postol fight was pretty good. Not so good. The MGM Garden Arena maxed out, can hold 16,000 plus. The attendance was 7,027 total.
Yeah, but they didn't open it up for that though.
They didn't.
Right.
Well, and the fact is that speaks volumes. Just because they filled the lower level, they honestly would have done a lot better at StubHub and would have sold StubHub out, which is a sellout, is considered anything north of 8,000.
I guess I meant that when a fight gets made or whatever, and they say, hey, we're only gonna sell this many tickets. It was at capacity of what tickets were available, I guess, is what I meant. Not that they sold out, a stadium or something like that.
And I get it why they've got to put a pay-per-view in Vegas, because you're going to get a bigger ticket price. You get people to come in from out of town. The spending's bigger. You've got a lot more room nights sold. You don't get that at a StubHub where it's a commuter sort of a venue. But ew, ouch, ouch, ouch. And I haven't seen pay-per-view numbers yet. We were talking last week. Was it going to be 50,000? Was it going to be 80,000? I just think it's going to be very poor.
If you're around, Gus, your thoughts on the future for Crawford?
Mike, I think strategically, sort of commercially and financially, Bob Arum is absolutely adamant about making the fight with Manny Pacquiao from that side, because of the business continuity in the sort of top-ranked model, and the fact that Manny Pacquiao has been his long-established pay-per-view star. And obviously, apart from the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight, Manny Pacquiao recently is a financial burden for him, given his minimum sort of $20 million purse. So I think Bob Arum is almost desperate to extricate him from the books, and naturally for Crawford to be that new top-ranked pay-per-view star. And what better from a sort of a subliminal point of view for to be the man, you've got to beat the man, and for Crawford to beat him. But in terms of unifying the belts, should Crawford try and sort of emulate the Gennady Golovkin type of strategy now? Personally, I don't think it's viable to go after Edward Trojanowski, or I think it's the IBF, and Ricky Burns now. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to see Ricky Burns go to Vegas and have his one last day hurrah, because between Frank Warren and his lawyers, I think they've more or less taken all of his money. Yeah. I think even Jonathan Guzman has more money than him, even though he had his purse stolen. Stylistically, what I'd like to see, I think there's two fights, but 140. One is with my boy Felix Diaz. I think that'll be a tremendous fight, and you're talking a guy with skill as well, bit of power. Because let's face it, he moved up to fight Vasquez at late notice, but he'll probably go back down to 140, and that would, and even the Bartholomew fight. Why I like that fight, Mike, is because if Terence decides to switch, Bartholomew can switch to neutralize it. He can switch. That would just be a bizarre sort of game of chess type fight. That has a lot of intrigue about it. So those two fights at 140, if he wants to stay. But I don't know how strong he is at the weight. I saw at the weigh-in him sort of reaching for fluids. He looked a little bit drawn, but given the amount of energy he sort of expanded in the ring, sort of buzzing around like a fly. Just to me, he's still strong and he still had the power. So, 147. Why not? Why not go up there and terrorize all the cats up there?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Let's move on. And that comment about Guzman, for those who do not know, Guzman, fighter who we talked about last week, won the vacant belt at 122. Dumb boxing move, possibly of the year. He took his purse, I believe it was $70,000, put it in a suitcase, I believe, as he was leaving Japan. Come to find out, the suitcase got stolen. All of his money gone. I mean, do these boxers have accounts? Have they ever heard of electronic deposit? You don't try.
Or like a novelty, like one of those giant novelty checks.
Yeah. So yeah, you don't keep that kind of money traveling around with that kind of cash. Just no. What I'm going to do is, and I think Dill had to dip out, so I want to thank Dill for joining us in the show earlier. I want to split these next few fights between a couple of people here and there, since that segment we're talking about Crawford and Postol went kind of long. I'm going to go to you, Gail and Gus, and talk Oscar Valdez defeating Rueda. Spectacular performance to the eyes of many as he stopped him in two. Rueda, he was aggressive, but the counterpunching skill of Valdez with power. He stood no hope. Hurt him in round one. Hurt him again in round two. Put him down and finished him with body shots. Gail and Gus, the display that Oscar Valdez put on the undercard of Crawford and Postol, talk about it. Are you there, Gail?
I am. There is nothing I enjoy more in boxing than a body shot knockout. And if a guy looks like he's been hit with a taser and goes down, I'm a happy woman. Valdez was so well prepared. His attack was relentless from the opening bell. He fought the fight that I think a lot of fans hoped they would have seen out of Terence Crawford. Aggressive, showy, dazzling the fans. He's got the right attitude. He's hungry. And I couldn't be happier for him. The quality of his opponent was a little suspect. These South American guys who've never fought outside their country or, surrounding hemisphere at least, come up here with an undefeated record, and there's a big darn question mark. Even with that aside, Valdez did absolutely everything we could have asked from him and more, and I'm very excited to see where he goes from here. And he's got the personality and the enthusiasm to be very fan-friendly, which we alluded to a little bit in the previous discussion, that sometimes Terence Crawford is just very low-key, and it hurts him. It hurts him with some of his fan appeal. Valdez, not a problem. And although he speaks English and Spanish equally well, that's another huge asset, especially in the western United States and Mexico, where there's a huge fan base. He's got everything going for him.
Your thoughts, Gus?
Mikey, this was the fight that stole the show. And, last week when we were talking about the fight, a lot of people were saying that Valdez would win, but they had no idea. They couldn't sort of break down the opponent and tell you why. But, I broke it down perfectly. And, I watched a lot of Matias back in Argentina as well, and I knew he was tailor-made for Oscar. But it's been an amazing journey watching Oscar, Mike. I first saw him at the World Championships in Milan, and I saw him personally as well in London, fighting in the Olympics as well. And he just seems to get better and better. Has all of the qualities, and this was a tremendous fight. And what Oscar was doing really well in the first round was, his jab was just thumping him. You could actually hear it. And, credit to Matias, he stood there and tried to trade. And but there was something that we saw, I think in basketball when somebody blocks a dunk, what do they call that? A free checking or something? When somebody's trying to dunk and somebody jumps up and blocks it. And we saw that in the fight when Rueda tried to land an uppercut, but Valdez actually almost poured out and blocked it and turned it with a check left hook, and that was just an amazing sight. But he broke him down. He showed a little bit more, and I'm delighted because it's been a great journey, watching him progress. And it's got not only the the will, the ethic and the fitness and the desire and the stamina. And I mean, he has all of the attributes. He's a real role model. So very, very happy for him.
A quick follow-up: how would you compare him with the rest of the featherweights, the Santa Cruz, Selby, Gary Russell specifically?
He beats them all. No
including
problem.
Santa Cruz.
Yeah, all of them. There's only one guy who's coming up, who I think will probably dominate all of the. Personally, I think he's the best young, and that's Edgar Valeria. But I think at the moment, Valdez will beat all of them. And I've thought about this a lot this week as well, and I've tried to sort of look at all of the strengths and weaknesses, whatever, but I think he has everything. And he's got devastating power as well, which people thought he'd never had. He's got the best footwork, Mike, working around the target as well. Punch efficiency. He has it all. I think he beats all of them.
Wow.
I would agree up to the point we start including Santa Cruz. But maybe after Saturday, I'll change my mind. We'll see.
Indeed. I will go to you, Scorsese, Jacob, and Daniel, and ask you about Jose Benavidez's to many controversial win over Chia Santana. Look, I'm one of the few who actually had Benavidez edging it out after watching it a second time, but I have to say my argument for that is not that strong. A lot of people feel that Francisco Chia Santana outworked Benavidez. Your thoughts, gentlemen?
You had the nerve to do that twice before the two? Man.
I told you I'm in the minority in that.
I was begging them to get out the ring.
Even though Benavidez, he pissed me off by the way he fights, but yeah.
It's not Chia Santana's fault. I mean, I seen him whoop up on I think the other guy, what's his name, the welterweight, Saddam Ali. I saw him whooping up on Saddam Ali, and when I heard about that fight, I said he's gonna whoop up on him too. I really didn't score the fight. I just felt that I knew what was coming. They kept on trying to say, well, this guy's the B-side. They kept saying he's the B-side tonight, so he's not getting no decision. I'm like, you're lying to me. You're not giving Chia Santana a decision here tonight. And what was it, 100 to 90?
Oh, the scores were ridiculous. 100 to 90 on one card. That's a shutout. 98 to 92 on the second card.
Oh, man.
That's 8 rounds to 2. I can get the 96, 94, but the other two, that's ridiculous. That's insulting.
Yeah, I think he's still on the ropes tonight, right now. I mean, I'm not going to say who won and lost the fight because it just got to a point I just said, hey, if they want to take the fight from, they want to get a fight to Chia Santana, which I knew they wouldn't, totally fine with it. Benavidez, I have no need to ever see him fight again. Never.
Daniel and Jacob, your thoughts?
Woo! Oh my God, this fight made me angry. Oh, dear Jesus, that fight made me angry. Chia Santana won. I scored at 96-90. He barely won, but he had it 96-94. Those scorecards were abysmal, to say the least. Because I don't care if you make the argument that, yes, Benavidez went to the ropes willingly. He still went to the ropes, and it still got outworked by Santana. When he didn't have to. He could have easily thrown. He knew he had the faster hands. He knew he had the better overall skill than Santana. And he chose to do that. I want to really ask, to what point did he want to do that for? Just to prove that he could take off the ropes? Eventually Benavidez is going to run into somebody that's going to hit him hard, and then he's going to crumple up into little pieces. And then hopefully then he'll learn this lesson. And I'll say this as a big brother. When your little brother is now starting to look like the better fighter than you, that must irk you. Because David Benavidez right now looks like the better prospect of that family.
Jacob.
I had Chia winning that fight, a close fight. I mean, Chia is, I think, limited on skill, but what the thing I do like about him is that he hustles. He's trying to win the fight. He's just constantly just going at it. I mean, I saw him live when he fought in Glendale on the Barrera Murat undercard, and I was, impressed there. And also when he fought Ali, I think in Madison Square Gardens, or I think it was in New York. But I mean, those cards were absolutely just ridiculous. It's the same. I mean, it seems like week after week we have these cards come out, and everybody's like, "What the fuck? Like, what are they watching? What's going on?" Like, it's the sports has been around so long. I don't know how we cannot get this thing fixed, and I don't know why somebody doesn't get these judges, and just like a fighter that gets suspended or caught with PEDs, these judges need to answer for their actions, and they should get suspended and stuff if they're doing stupid things like that.
Indeed. Yeah, like I said, I'm one of the few that actually have Benavidez winning that fight, but I can't with those scorecards. They were just way out of line. I can understand a point, 2 points either way, but a shutout for Benavidez, 8-2 for Benavidez, that's just ridiculous. I'm going to you, Gus, with this final fight. Took place today, WBO bantamweight title in Thailand. I wasn't able to see the fight, unfortunately, but you did, and you shared the link with me. And in your view, it was one of the fights of the year, from what I saw. Just knockdowns back and forth. It's very exciting.
Yeah, Mike, it was.
And just let the folks know who these fighters were, by the way.
Absolutely, it was a fight between Marlon Tapeles, who was 28-2 coming into the fight from the Philippines, and he traveled to Thailand to face the two-time and the incumbent champion at the time, the WBO 118 pounds bantamweight champion, Panglong Sorsinoi, and he had a record of 52-3. So you can see clearly from the record he was the more established fighter, two-time champion as well. So he had the experience, and given that he was the hometown fighter as well, and this was just an amazing all-out sort of toe-to-toe war. Now, stylistically, Mike, it had the sort of elements of Takashi Miura versus Francisco Vargas, which was a wonderful fight from last year, with the fighter from the Philippines, Marlon Tapeles, being the southpaw, with sort of a ramrod left hand reminiscent of Miura, and Vargas being Panglong with the sort of more slick boxer with more the sort of straight right hands, and the fight was just sort of 4 knockdowns before Marlon Tapeles from the Philippines actually ended the fight in the 11th round with sort of a decisive knockout. But sort of going through the fight, Mike, it was just ebbs and flows. Now both fighters fought pretty much in the middle of the ring, both sort of tucked down low, an inside fight, but they weren't shoulder to shoulder, so they were pretty much in the pocket. Very early on, you could see Tapeles had the quicker hand speed and the foot speed, but Panglong had the sort of better, more accurate timing, and he was just landing better hooks, and the fight was very much about the sort of lead power punches and backhands that both fighters were landing throughout. And the fight, that it was just alternating between rounds, but from the sort of 4th round onwards, the champion Panglong, he commenced his body attack, and he landed just a barrage of back and forth relentless body work, and he ended up flooring Tobias in the 5th round twice with huge body shots and sort of right and left crosses. And how Tobias actually got up, you could see when he got up after an 8 count, he was more or less slouched on the ropes. And Pangalang just continued the body work until the bell rang. And you know, you could have, with the 2 knockdowns, you could have scored that round a 10-7, but given the sort of domination, I think one of the judges may have had it even a 10-6 fight. So at that stage, the champion Pangalang had built up a pretty decisive lead by that. But credit to Tobias, I don't know how in the 6th round he come out showing amazing powers of recovery, because clearly from the bodywork, you know, that's energy sapping as well. But he managed to sort of retaliate, and he landed actually a number of body shots himself and a right cross which actually floored the champion Pangalang, you know, in that round. So, you know, amazing work, you know, I mean, for him just to even come about. And from that round pretty much onwards, Tobias started dominating the fight. Pangalang was showing a little bit of signs of fatigue. You know, he'd pretty much exhausted all of his energy putting in all of the body work. So by the time the sort of 11th round, when Tobias actually put him away with some huge crosses, and he landed, you know, on his back, it was pretty much a combination of sheer exhaustion and the amount of punishment he took. You know, just a tremendous fight, and credit to Marlon Tobias, you know, to capture the WBO title, to dispose of the 2-time champion Pangalang, you know, and what a division this 118 pounds is, Mike, because we've got a lot of activity. We've got Yamanaka, he's fighting Moreno for the WBC strap. You've got Lee Haskins fighting Stuart Hall for the IBF strap. It's a battle of Wales versus England. And then you've got Rashid Warren. I think he's taking on Jamie McDonald, and that'll be for the full WBA. I think that's the unification. So now we've got a new player, Marlon Tobias, and you know, maybe there's fights with, you know, Zalani out there, big money fights in England should he want it, with Paul Butler as well maybe. So that division, Mike, is just hotted up now. The 118. So a lot of great fights forthcoming.
Yeah, and the issue is the best fighter in that division is the fighter you didn't mention right now, who doesn't have a belt.
He's more highly ranked in sort of flyweight than he is in bantamweight, which is bizarre.
Yeah, because I don't see him moving back down in super flyweights, particularly unless he gets a fight with Roman, and the fighter I'm talking about is Omani Tete. I don't think much of Warren based on what I saw, particularly his last fight. But yeah, interesting things happening there in 118 for sure. I want to go to the news. The issue with Ruslan Chagaev, Daniel, stripped of the WBA title for not paying sanctioning fees. It looks like he may face a suspension as well. My concern is, as a result of this, we may see the raw return of Fres Oquendo. Old as dirt, Fres Oquendo could possibly be the WBA champion. No!
There are no guarantees.
Sadly, that's a scenario. First of all, Chagaev pretty much just disappeared. He literally disappeared after getting the title back, after it was stripped from Lucas Brown, who was amazingly making other news. We'll probably touch on that later.
Oh, you can touch on it right now quickly.
Apparently, David Hay is no longer trying to negotiate with Shannon Briggs. He's trying to negotiate with Lucas Brown. And Lucas Brown apparently has now entered the WBC's VADA program. So some things are turning up there for Lucas Brown. But the WBA situation was murky because you have to look at the other side of that tournament. And what you're seeing right now is Alexander Ustamov looking like he's getting cold feet after agreeing in principle to fight Luis Ortiz on the Canelo undercard. And now it's looking like he's trying to back out. If it reaches a point where both Luis Ortiz gets stripped and Tyson Fury gets stripped because of this little situation that's been happening and with the British Board of Control, two things could happen. Either the WBA gives his belt back to Vladimir Klitschko, which if you judge recent history of the WBA, that's normally what they do. Or they'll literally give the undisputed WBA World Championship to Fres Laquenda, who all he had to do was file a lawsuit to get that shot.
Oh dear. That's all I got to say about that. It's just oh dear.
Yeah, and yes, Gail, yeah, the ghost of Hillary Clinton is on my TV.
Let's move on. I don't know if any of you guys. Well, I'll go to Gail right quick. Earlier this week, the beginning press conference for Carlos Cuadras, Roman Gonzalez in LA, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Gail. You was there doing some reporting. Your account on what went down.
This was the announcement of the fight, the introduction of the fighters at the Forum, and they did the news conference at the venue, which was a nice touch, including Peter Nelson representing HBO, which is airing the bout. And it's an interesting situation for the network because they've also got, at the same night, which is September 10th, Gennady Golovkin and Kell Brook. So HBO's plan is this. HBO will show the Golovkin-Brook fight live from Great Britain. They will then take a little bit of a break. They will then have their main event for the North American audiences, which will have a replay. It will start with a replay of Golovkin-Brook. We'll then have the co-main event, which was not originally going to be televised, but due to popular demand is, and I'll get to that in a second. And then we will have Roman Gonzalez versus Carlos Cuadras of Mexico for 115-pound WBC belt, which Cuadras holds. Gonzalez is coming up in weight for the first time, and this will be his first American network main event. There was a bit of laughter all around that, in effect, Golovkin is going to now be Chocolatito's undercard for that fight. And because of bundling all these fights on the same day together, the network's able, frankly, to afford it and feel that they're going to have a big enough audience to put them all together. In between, to just sort of bridge from the one main event in England to the other main event in Los Angeles, the undercard fight that's gotten added was absolutely genius. It is the super fan-friendly rematch between Jesus Sotocaraz and Yoshihiro Kamagai at welterweight. These two guys fought at the LA Fight Club in April in front of a packed house and some satellite rooms. I mean, the place was just crammed to the gills, and it was with nothing on the line. No title, no particular avenue that they were aiming at. It was just simply two guys willing to get in there and entertain and sacrifice themselves in the doing of it, and it ended in a draw. So why not do it again, this time in front of a much, much bigger audience with much, much bigger money at stake? Good for those guys. They're both going to earn a nice purse out of it, and the fans are extremely excited about that fight because it was seen by such a small audience the first time. You know, those are the kind of fights that kind of take on mythic proportions, and out of the 1,200 people who are actually in the room, now you can probably find 6,000 or 7,000 who swear they were there. who just swear they were there. Funny. So Soto Karass was at the news conference. He looks good. He's in great spirits. He's super excited about the fight. And it just shows you that sometimes the fans really don't care, you know, who's got a belt and who's got a record of this or that and who's undefeated. These guys have no titles. They both have losses on their record. No one cares. No one gives a shit about that. They just want to see this fight. But the men of the hour were Chocolatito and Cuadras. Chocolatito is interesting, as we were talking about Terence Crawford being very low-key. Roman Gonzalez makes Terence Crawford look really animated because he is an extremely low-key guy. He's very humble. You know, the fact that he's 5'2", you know, 112 pounds, you know, he's just a little guy. And, you know, the one time he really lights up with a smile is when he talks about representing his home nation of Nicaragua. This fight on September 10th for him represents the potential of being a champion in his 4th weight division, which would be one more than the current record for Nicaraguan boxers held by the great Alexis Arguello, who is his hero. So that's very meaningful to him, in addition to coming up in weight to fight at 115. Cuadras isn't really well known by a lot of audiences outside Mexico. He's undefeated. He's a good-looking young guy. He kind of resembles a dark-haired Canelo at 115 pounds, if you can imagine that. He looks like he's just having the time of his life, you know, and whatever party that guy's going to, you want to go to. He struck us all that way. And if you can find the video of the news conference, which is on YouTube on the Golden Boy Boxing YouTube channel, I highly recommend you watch it to get a sense of what kind of guy Cuadras is. He began his remarks in Spanish. They're fairly simple, so if you speak even a little Spanish, you could tell he was just simply happy to be there and so forth. But as he started his remarks in Spanish, he switched to English, which is something that you were all kind of still waiting for Canelo to do. It shows that Cuadras is thinking about the audience, which is extremely smart of him. And, you know, whether he speaks English well enough to do this on a regular basis or whether he rehearsed it, none of us cared, because he said, you know, sorry, Chocolatito. This part was in Spanish. He looked at Chocolatito and said, you know, I think very highly of Roman. He's my friend, but I'm sorry this belt's coming back to Mexico with me because I'm very fast, I'm very strong, and I'm very, very handsome, baby. And with this, whips, he's wearing a blazer. At this point, after we all start laughing, and the last part was in English, so we all knew exactly what he was saying. With this, in one move, he opens his jacket and pulls out a carton of chocolate milk and at that point, in front of the cameras, snapping away, guzzles the thing in front of Chocolatito. Absolutely hilarious. The media all rushed up to get photos of him posed with that chocolate milk, and this is a guy who knows how to entertain. So the news media present is looking for big things on September 10th. It's a good fight. It's an interesting test for Roman going up. He doesn't have to risk any of his current titles to do it. So it's a good test. It's a good matchup for both. Having a Mexican fighter in Los Angeles always draws a crowd, and the Forum has become Roman's second home. He's very comfortable there, so it's smart all around. This is exactly what promoters need to do. This is exactly what networks need to do, and it was made economically feasible putting all of these fights together in essentially one big package.
Gail, you know, you spoke about Cuadras. I think folks are going to love his ring entrance as well, because he literally dances all the way down and dances in the ring before his name is called out as well. It's just amazing.
Yeah, he just, I'd never met him. He exudes personality. You don't have to be in his presence very long to really like him. And he and Roman couldn't be more different in their approach. But there's clearly a lot of respect. They clearly respect each other. They respect the sport. But hey, they're going to have fun too. They like what they do. They enjoy it. You know, nobody should be in boxing if they don't enjoy it. You work way too hard. So I'm personally really pleased to see kind of the good-natured kidding around with each other, enjoying it, and, you know, looking forward to a show. That's what the fans want to see.
I'm going to open up here to anybody who knows about this story. The issue involving the New York State Athletic Commission. I think Daniel, he talked about it with me. I first heard about it on his show Monday, as a matter of fact, and I did some research. This is in response to the Magomed Abdulsalamov bout in which Magomed suffered injuries resulted in his career. According to a report Monday, the New York State Athletic Commission was ruled that they failed to carry out their responsibilities prior to, during, and after that bout. State Inspector Catherine Leahy Scott did a 48-page report and found the New York State Athletic Commission filled with all kinds of problems, lack of appropriate emergency medical protocols and oversight procedures, clear conflicts of interest among senior staff, reflecting a systematic breakdown at its most basic operation, Scott said. After a 32-month investigation, Scott report also made several recommendations for the commission that to implement, including it pertains to emergency communications and procedures, ethics protocols, medical examinations, providing interpreters for boxers. I'll go to Daniel or anybody who wants to chime in on it. The ramifications of this, and I think they wrote a kind of a settlement that they have essentially have to have some kind of insurance or something like that. Daniel, your thoughts? Any comments from anybody here?
The main issue that falls into it is the law that legalized mixed martial arts in New York State. Part of that law is actually a poison pill measure that was meant to kill the bill, but it didn't. It was that any promoter has to have $1 million medical insurance bond on every fighter on their card if you are fighting now in New York State. The problem is, there's no boxing promoter right now that can afford putting $1 million bond on fight cards that are, like I said, yes, on TV we only see like 3 or 4, but it's actually like 10 or 11 of them. In reality, they're boxing cards. That's $22 million that they have to put in just on medical bonds. And what this report tells me, because the New York State Athletic Commission has the authority to lower that bond by September 1st, is that they're probably not going to lower that bond, which ineffectively kills boxing in New York, because the only 2 entities that I've shown that have no problem paying that fee are UFC and Bellator. And they've come out publicly saying, we're fine with that bond. And you could probably already see some of the consequences of it. One fight that was announced recently, this rematch between Danny Jacobs and Sergio Mora, when Danny Jacobs is supposed to be like one of the cornerstones of the Brooklyn boxing series. This fight's now being held in Reading, Pennsylvania. That's the bond talking. That's Al Heyman saying I can't afford to put cards in New York anymore. Unless something dramatic happens, we may see a mass exodus of boxing in the state of New York.
I will go to Gus, Jacob, Scorsese. Any follow-up, any response to this? Could this mean in the future we will have no boxing in NYC? And what if other state commissions adapt the same ruling?
That is a a very real possibility, Mike. I'm actually very keen to obtain a copy of this adjudication report to actually look at what are the
Okay.
contributions they stipulated, because
Okay. I got the report here, Gus, and what I'll do is I'll send it to you via Skype.
Excellent. Because they're listing a number of not only health and safety contraventions that resulted or may have sort of exacerbated the problems. Now that to me that this just looks like punitive measures that they've introduced to try and invoke such a high minimum criteria, for these promoters. Because how many low-level sort of boxing and sort of up-and-coming boxing fights can promoters even put there, Mike? They can, because of the affordability factor. There's only super fights that you could potentially put there where promoters have, the working capital to, we obviously call it sort of indemnity insurance over here. To sort of raise that much capital for, say, if you got a fight card of, maybe 6 fights, you're looking at, between 15 to sort of 25 million, which is extraordinary. So it doesn't surprise me that promoters are now relocating fights to other states. But a tragedy or something can happen at any time, and it wouldn't surprise me if such punitive measures were also introduced into other states. So it is a very, very interesting time to see what's going to transpire.
Before I go to Scorsese and Jacob, I will say this: when it comes to the New York State Athletic Commission, first and foremost, they should have known better in terms of specifically the bout with Magomedov. Irresponsibility on their part. I mean, I've said this before and I'll say it again. They should have learned from history when Eubank beat Watson in their rematch in '91.
Yeah.
The British Board of Boxing showed the same lack of responsibility and accountability in terms of having proper medical facilities, treatments, and taking the proper procedures via Watson, not taking him to the immediate hospital, not having an ambulance at ringside, and other factors, to the point that the British Board was sued, in which Michael Watson won that lawsuit. Given who this is, the New York State Athletic Commission, one of the most powerful in the country, they should have been up to snuff. They should have had their I's dotted and their T's crossed. The other thing I will say is that I know there's a lot of back and forth discussion about a one central body in boxing. And a lot of people disagree with that. The one aspect that I agreed with it was there was talk about one insurance, and within that one governing body in the bill sponsored by McCain, part of the deal was have medical procedures in order so the stuff like what happened in New York would not happen. Pre-fight CAT scans, for instance, making sure ambulance was there, proper doctors were there at ringside, going to the right medical facilities, which has the equipment to deal with a boxer who suffers from head trauma in a fight, particularly hematoma. I mean, I go back to the Watson Eubank. The British Board, they got their act right, and you saw it with Ben McClellan. You saw it with Botile and Engel. Once you knew they were seriously injured, there was right there, doctor right there in the ring. Make sure to give him oxygen, got him out the ring as quick as possible, got him to the nearest hospital, and they had the facilities there where they could be treated, unlike Eubank Watson too. So for the New York State Athletic Commission to be this lackadaisical, this lazy, shame on them, and they basically got what they deserve. Now, could this have a ramification all over boxing? I don't know. It's too early to say that, but specifically in terms of the New York State Commission, this is not good, and this is not good at all. I'll go to Jacob and Scorsese. Any comments on this?
I mean, it's a terrible thing. They have to be prepared for, any type of injury, and I totally agree with you on their point for they're kind of getting their comeuppance for their negligence. But I'm not so sure. I mean, I don't know how long this will stick. I mean, there's aspect of boxing that brings in money, tourism, and all that stuff. So I mean, as they're losing that revenue stream and the taxes from that, I could see a scenario where maybe it's that way for a while, and either the bond gets lowered or something to the effect of they change the rules a little bit, or it gets altered in some place. I hope other states don't adopt that, and I mean, obviously, I want to see boxing. I live in California, Southern California, and I want to see boxing here, but I also want other people to be able to enjoy boxing. So I think that would be a huge blow to a city that like New York, that has so much rich history with boxing, and especially ones that have fighters that want to represent their home boroughs and whatnot.
Scorsese? If he's around, I don't think he's around.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I just didn't have much for it on that. I think they summed it up pretty well. The money, I think the money gonna win at the end of the day. If somebody's paying too much, promoters paying too much, like they said, the commission's losing money, the state losing money, it'll win at the end of the day. That ain't gonna be there. So you're just gonna have to get their act together all together. You don't want to see fighters getting hurt. Well, fighters will get hurt. That's the truth of this sport, ugly truth. Unless we just start choreographing these fights, fighters are gonna get hurt. I mean, it's just the ugly truth. But when it happens, like you said, the act got to be right. You got to have doctors there. You got to have a medical team. I don't care if you have the smallest promotions ever. Those things need to be taken care of. But I don't think it takes $1 million to do those things.
Well, unfortunately, the thing, Scorsese, is when you specifically look at the Magomed situation, $1 million is not going to be enough to take care of him for the rest of his life.
No, it's not.
Not by any means. That's the reason why it's going in there with those injuries, so it covers into it. Because I'll let you right now, folks. I'm speaking for personal experience myself right now. Just going to an emergency room for a day can land you a $1,000 or $1,500 bill, medical bill. That's just one day in the emergency room over maybe something trivial. Imagine going for something major, like an eye, or like in Magomed's case, brain damage, internal bleeding in the brain. $1 million is not going to be enough, unfortunately. And well, luckily in this case, when it comes to the commissions stepping into it, there's only 2 commissions that pretty much have as much sway as the New York State Athletic Commission. When it comes to boxing, that's the Nevada State Athletic Commission and the California State Athletic Commission. There's a lot, actually, some states that don't even have athletic commissions. Alabama,
that's true.
Alabama didn't even have an athletic commission until Deontay Wilder happened. Deontay Wilder is the main reason the Alabama Athletic Commission exists, because there was no way they could hold a fight without it in Mobile or in Birmingham. So what can be done is most likely have universal rules But you can't just unfortunately put it all in one commission because a lot of things were happening. Is actually you mentioned it. We mentioned it actually on Monday's show, in that the main reason a lot of states don't have athletic commissions because a lot of fights happen in Native American casinos. So it falls under the sovereignty of those Native American tribes. They don't have to have athletic commissions because the tribes are supposed to handle that. So universal rules may not work in because, unfortunately, those are the little trivia areas that may fall down into it. And New York, unfortunately, is not going to. I'll let you guys know right now. It's not going to lose money because if you tell UFC and if you tell Bellator, there's going to be less dates for boxing, which means there are more dates open for you. They're going to take it because they've been dying to get to New York. And they're going to take every cent going to it. And with the way MMA is popular over here, they're going to make that money. They'll easily make that money in the short term. The only way they're really going to lose money is if we have a really devastating injury in MMA. Because it'll take a minute for the New York State Assembly and the New York State Senate to re-ban MMA. If that happens.
It's probably going to happen. I mean, it's a contact sport. They got 4-ounce gloves. And, you know, I can't imagine that at some point, because the sport is very, you know, still kind of very new in the sense of sports in general. But, I mean, someone is going to get hurt. It's just, I Scorsese hit the nail on the head when he said that's just the nature of it, you know. But I think the UFC, although they're not really the UFC anymore, I think they got bought by another company or they got sold. I think they're going to start to run in, as they become more mainstream, they're going to start to run into similar problems like all other mainstream sports where, yeah, you want to put on all these events, but like injuries and, you know, the failing of drug tests and all that stuff start to damage your cards, and then your attendance starts to drop because people don't want to see, you know, maybe the B-level or C-level opposition that's headlining your cards because you're having all these type of problems that come along with most sports. When sports are in their infancy, a lot of these guys fight injured or fight, you know, they don't have as much of the regulations and whatnot. So I do think that the UFC is they're probably at their peak right now, and they are gonna start to plateau and maybe go down because of those reasons.
Let's move forward and start previewing fights coming up. Fight tomorrow. Adonis Stevenson making his return to the ring, fighting Thomas Williams for Stevenson's WBC belt at 175. I'm gonna go to you on this one, Scorsese. For me, I think this bout is going to end in a knockout. Either way.
Yeah.
Both guys can punch. On the surface, Stevenson should win because he's the most skilled fighter. He has better movement. I think he has the faster hands. But my problem is Stevenson has been out of the ring for a while now. I've heard that he put on quite a bit of weight in the interim. And he's 38 years old. I know he hasn't taken much punishment, but still, 38 is 38. He'll be, I think, 39 either late this year, early next year. If I was Williams, I would put pressure on him, see if Stevenson got the legs, if he has the conditioning. All the rumors true that Stevenson put on a lot of weight and had to lose a lot of weight to make for this bout. If it is, it will show later on in the fight. So for me, basically, Williams for me should not go all out because he should be responsible, but he should take the fight to Adonis Stevenson. Your thoughts?
I flat out said, I talked to Thomas Williams. I talked to him just tweets. I told him, man, I thought you were a quitter. You know, I flat out told him, I thought you were a quitter. But to go in there, I like the fight first of all. But to go in there, I think he had to fight with the Cuban. I never can remember this guy's name. He came over here with a great pedigree, but didn't pan out as a pro.
Campillo.
No, no. Campillo's from Colombia. It's a Cuban that he beat. He lost to Campillo. That's the fight where he lost on the cut. Cuban's an older light heavyweight, fought at cruiserweight, got knocked out. Then he went back to light heavyweight.
His name is on the tip of my tongue. I can't remember right now.
You talking about his last fight? It's Rodriguez?
No. Rodriguez. I was getting to that too, but he's had about 3 fights in a row that it blew me away, man. I'm talking about Rodriguez is my fight. I missed the Fight of the Year awards show, but that was definitely my Fight of the Year, period, and it still is. Guy can't be a quitter in those kind of fights. I told him, I said, I thought you were a quitter, but when I saw that, you packed your bags, went home after the Campillo fight, and you wiped the tears, and you said, hey, I ain't never crying like that again. But you're dealing with Adonis Stevenson with the game plan you put in there, Mike, and for him to continuously pressure Stevenson, he's not a great defensive technician, moving his head, coming forward, and that great left hand Stevenson can drop. I think 6-7 rounds.
You talk about Savigny, or however you put it.
Yeah, Humberto Savigny.
Yeah.
With Stevenson with 6 or 7 rounds, I think he got that KO. Stevenson, one of the most dangerous men in boxing, I believe. Love him or hate him, I just think this is KO stoppage right here. For Stevenson.
Daniel, Jacob Gus.
This fight is going to end in a knockout. I don't think Stevenson's going to be the one doing the knockout, though.
Woo!
I'm with Mike when it comes to this. There's things that affect layoff, and if you just decide not to be in the gym and just put on weight, you're going to face the consequences. You may not get knocked out, but you might lose. Look at what Romain Stavern went through with Deontay Wilder. He didn't prepare right. He was out in the clubs with Floyd. He was pretty big. Apparently he weighed 290 pounds almost at fight week and had to do an extreme weight loss regimen to get to his normal fighting weight. And look what happened to him. Stevenson might face the same thing because also what happens to Kim Stevenson is also the measure of complacency. The fact that Thomas Williams right now has been arguably his toughest opponent since winning the title should tell you of the fighter selection and should tell you of the caliber of fighters fans expect from him. And like I said, it wouldn't surprise me at all, this fight in a knockout, like I said, because I'll give Stevenson credit too. He has that left hand, but to me, he may be a little bit more complacent. He may just had the good time for a little bit too long, and he's facing a guy that knows this is his shot. He has to do it. Because if he doesn't, he's like I said, Thomas Williams, if he loses, can you honestly see him say, okay, yeah, he'll fight Kovalev or he'll fight Ward after that? Or will he just be forgotten?
Right.
That's the point. That's the motivation that Thomas Williams is going to go with. And the Donald Stevenson is going with, I'm sitting pretty, I'm getting paid, and because of the way I pick my opponents, I'm going to win by knockout. Well, unfortunately, you might just face the same thing that Andre Fonfara did. And Fonfara was winning that fight before that right hand landed from Joe Smith Jr. So, Donald Stevenson, that could happen to you.
Hey, but can we get numbers on the layoff? Because he always fights 2 times a year. But I did hear that Al Heyman and the guys told him to basically get a break in. Can we get numbers? Because he normally fights 2 times a year. So I think he's used to being the old man in the ring. He's used to being the least active guy. It's that I hesitate with saying this. People don't like him. He's just that skilled. He's just that good at what he does.
Okay, he fought twice in 2012, 4 times in 2013, twice in 14, twice in 15, and his last fight was in September of 15.
Mm-hmm. So the 8, what we going on?
Almost a year.
Yeah. Never been that long, but I think he's just used to being that elder statesman that knocks people out. And like I said, I think the skills just win the day for him.
I mean, let's just say, okay. Let's just say his last bout in 2013 was in November. He fought basically 6 months later in May 14. Then he fought 7 months after that in December 14. And then after that, he fought. There was a 4-month layoff because he fought in April 2015, and then his last fight was 5 months after that, September 2015, and now this fight he's coming off of a 10-month layoff.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna matter. So, Thomas Williams is a good opponent. He earned the shot. They went in there telling him, if Rodriguez wins, he's getting the shot. If you win, you're getting the shot. And he went in there. He put on a hell of a performance. He knocked that man's neck off several times. That fight had some car wreck type punches. It's just whiplash. And he earned the shot. They said Alvarez gets the winner. I see a guy named Shabransky is like not Shabransky, but what's the other Ukrainian guy? He's fighting Joe Smith Jr. to be an eliminator for what's his name, Gus?
Alexander Vodzik.
Yeah, Vodsik's fighting Joe Smith Jr. in the WBC eliminator, supposed to. So he's gonna have his work cut out for him. But I think he's gonna show his mettle. This guy's just an older champion. If it was anybody else that wasn't so hated, they'd look at his age and say, "Damn, this dude is a great fighter." And I think it's about time he's gonna be proving
it. Jacob, Gus, your thoughts on this fight with Stevenson and Williams?
I am going with Daniel. Also, I think that, I was at that fight, that Williams-Rodriguez fight. It was an awesome fight. I think Williams is hungry. I think his nickname's like Big Dog or Top Dog or something like that. Top Dog. But I think Top Dogs. I think he's hungry. He's willing to go to the Lion's Den. I think he believes in himself. I think that was a sensational win that he had. He has power. With Stevenson, I'm not as sold on him on his actual skills in general. He does have a nice left punch that seems to he can kind of coast on. But I do think the layoff's going to affect him. I do think the age affects fighters. We're not talking about a Hopkins here or some of these anomalies that we've seen in the past. We're talking about Stevenson, and his opponents haven't been, to me, like the top level opponents. So when we talk about like that Ward Kovalev, I want to see them fight, a little bit step ups, not like easy work, because they need to prepare for top level competition. So the other thing about Stevenson too is that if you take him deep, he starts to kind of like fade a little bit. So I think Williams. I agree with you, Mike. I think Williams has to come at him, but not like taking too many risks where he's going to get caught. But he needs to put some pressure on him. Show him that he's there to fight. Believe in himself. Believe in his power, and take him to like that 6th, 7th round. And if he can catch him with a punch, I think he can finish him. So I'll say 8th round KO Williams.
Your thoughts, Gus?
I agree. We're not talking Hopkins. We're talking much better than Hopkins, man. This guy's amazing, man.
No, you've already got yourself in trouble with that.
Guy's amazing, bro. I'm serious, though, man. This dude is he's crazy. Go ahead, Gus.
Yeah, Mike, Superman, he's probably the most frustrating of all the PBC killers because the amount of skill that he embodies, because, we saw that Chilembo-Kovalev fight, and what Chilembo was able to do with his reach, snapping Kovalev's head back. Stevenson with his 77-inch reach and his power, he would have knocked that Kovalev out early in that fight. Nothing stylistically. Stevenson for me is the best light heavyweight. He has it. He has everything, and that and that's the point with the frustration we have. He's just become fat and comfortable. When now we're just paying these guys $1 million, $1.2 million to fight nobody, fight once a year. Why is he going to risk it at sort of 38 years old now? He's in that comfortable lifestyle. But this fight, Mike, it does have parallels for me for that Campillo Top Dog Williams fight, because there we had I think Campillo might have been 36 or 38. Correct me if I'm wrong, Scorsese. I think he was pretty old at that time, and Williams was, what was he, a lot younger. I think Campillo had a long reach as well. Yeah, he was southpaw as well. Top Dog is southpaw. I think Top Dog only has a 72-inch reach. Campillo had a pretty long reach, if I remember, in that fight. I think it might have been a 75 or a 76, so that gave him problems. So in this fight, if Top Dog is either forced or elects to fight on the back foot, trying to chase down Adonis, and we know Adonis likes to use that lateral movement and fire his backhand, then Thomas is in trouble. He's got to cut the distance, and he's got to do what he did to Edwin Rodriguez. He's got to break his rhythm, force the issue, because we know Adonis, he runs out of gas after 6 rounds, even in fights where he's not even getting hit. So Williams he's got to step on the pace, force the issue, cut the distance, and hurt him. And I think he does have the power to hurt him, but Adonis equally, we know, has one-punch knockout power. So I think one way or the other, this is going to be a spectacular fight. Can I see it going beyond 5 and 6? Probably not. No, but I've got to go with Adonis. I think he has all of the talent and the power.
Let's move forward. I'm going right back to you, Gus. Following evening Saturday on Showtime, Leo Santa Cruz is going to defend his WBA featherweight belt against Carl Frampton. Frampton moving up in weight from 122 to 126. I'm going to you because Frampton, Irish fighter. The assessment in the UK and the thoughts in the UK in terms of Frampton, how much of a chance do they get him against a Santa Cruz who seems to be a much improving fighter?
Well, Mike, they say Belfast is the home of boxing, and if you've been over there, and I've had the fortune to be over there and seen fights over there, it's
Well, I said Ireland, Northern Ireland. You're right.
Yeah. The amount of sort of boxing gyms they have over there, and the amount of kids fighting as well, is extraordinary. It's just sad that we don't see a lot more of them fighting in the professional ranks, because they've got an absolutely huge amateur contingency. But in terms of the optimism, there's going to be a massive amount of not only fans traveling from Tigers Bay, Belfast, all over, probably even from the Republic and Derry and Cork, that'll travel with Frampton, because he's got some of the best fans in boxing now at the moment. Obviously they're going to be supporting their fighters, so you're probably going to get a biased point of view, but it is a credit to him. He's stepping up from bantamweight. Now you can argue maybe he was dodging Rigondeaux, but another reason that he was definitely struggling at the weight. So credit to him. He's going up against Santa Cruz, and not even requiring a tune-up fight to take to try and take the crown away from him, but ultimately keep the belt within the PBC. So it's a great fight for Al, one way or the other. His guy gets to keep the belt, but I think it can be none other than a spectacular fight, because we've got the high volume from Leo Santa Cruz against what I think is the better technical boxer, a guy who operates more on angles, sits in the pocket. Traditionally, he never really gets hurt, but we have seen him, a few times being hurt, especially in his stateside debut. But once again, I think weight, making weight there was a factor with him. So here he's going to be more comfortable. I think his power will carry up because he is heavy-handed. If anybody doesn't believe he's heavy-handed, they need to go back and look at Scott Quigg's X-rays, because that there is pop there. I don't know, Santa Cruz, for all of his volume, I don't think he's efficient in his. He is. Don't get me wrong. He does have power. He does have combination punches in both hands, and that's good. He's not predominantly, one-handed. Yeah, he beat on a smaller fighter in Abner Maris who went balls to the wall, but I think Carl Frampton will be a lot more clever. I think he'll be disciplined. I think Shane McGuigan will try and use more lateral movement. I think he'll have more angles to his work. Santa Cruz is the thing is Santa Cruz is the A-sider, and we know the loyalty that he has, with Al Heyman and the respect they have between one another. So is Frampton gonna get a decision if it's on points? I don't think so. So it could be Santa Cruz by robbery. That was my first instinct. I can't see Santa Cruz stopping him. Oh man. Oh,
This is hard for you to pick this one, huh?
Yeah, and I'm gonna get killed by a friend of mine, Kira, if I go against her fighter in Frampton. I'll lose all respect. But I'll go Frampton, Mike. I'll go Frampton on points.
Go to you, Scorsese, and then you. Oh, Scorsese is left. I'm sorry. Jacob, Daniel, your thoughts?
Yeah.
And by the way, Scorsese, before he had to dip out, he said he's going with Santa Cruz, maybe by stoppage.
All right. Just one point to Gus's comment about him Frampton not getting a decision. I'm actually really surprised since the inception of the PBC how many decisions have gone the right way. When we thought, oh, this person would never get a decision in that environment. So just wanted to point that out. But I got Santa Cruz. I think can Frampton win this fight? Yes, he can. He has to fight in a sense almost a perfect fight where he has to stay away from Santa Cruz in the sense of using that movement, that lateral movement. He has very good boxing skills. He does have pop in his punch. Even before the quick fight, he got to Kiko Martinez first, I believe. I think he fought him twice, but he was able to knock him out, I think, first, before Quigg did. And, he's got to use his boxing ability, but I do think that he'll frustrate Santa Cruz early on, but I don't think that he'll be able to keep Santa Cruz off him, and Santa Cruz is just this freight train that's just going to keep on coming. He's going to keep on throwing. He's not going to give up on himself, and I think eventually he's going to catch Carl Frampton and eventually start to wear on Carl Frampton, and then like in the fight against Quigg, where Quigg started to kind of put it into a second gear, even with a broken jaw, and kind of take over that later part of that fight. I think Santa Cruz will do the same thing, except more effectively, and will drop Frampton and eventually stop him in the 10th.
Daniel?
I gotta give credit to Gus in a way. He did mention the fact that Carl Frampton is a bit heavy-handed. It's true that there's a reason why Scott Quigg had a broken jaw in that fight. However, the thing that gets me the most is he's still technically the smaller guy versus Santa Cruz. As far as I can think in height and I think maybe in reach as well. And unfortunately for Frampton, he does, as Quigg showed in the second half of the fight, he starts to get frustrated a little bit when guys start bringing it on and getting the motor running. And Leo Santa Cruz has a motor where once he starts, you can't stop it. He'll just keep going through combination punches. Yeah, they may not have power, but he hurts people just by accumulation of punches. And the fact of the matter is also that, in all reality, Santa Cruz does fight to his opponent's level, and right now, this is the best opponent that we're seeing Santa Cruz face since Morris. And he only faced one in between, Kiko Martinez. So I expect a good show for Santa Cruz. I don't expect a stoppage, but I could see him winning by points. I could see it being unanimous.
My issue is, can Frampton establish the jab? How is he going to counter the reach and activity of Santa Cruz? If he can establish the jab and fight at a slow pace, use that jab to slow the pace of the fight, so he can slow Santa Cruz down to the point where he can actually use eye discipline, and for moments where he can catch Santa Cruz, particularly if Santa Cruz comes in, I think he could win the fight. My problem is that Santa Cruz fights at such a fast pace. I mean, this dude can throw 100 punches around easy. And if Santa Cruz establishes his jab, I don't think he can knock Frampton out, but I think he will win by a clear decision. So that's my key for me, and because I'm not sure if Frampton can slow Santa Cruz down and get the jab going enough to hold Santa Cruz off at bay, because to me, everything Frampton does is done with the jab. He has one of the best jabs in the sport, in my opinion. But I just don't think he can establish that punch in this fight against a taller guy who's going to be using those long arms to throw combinations after combinations after combinations, where he's not going to give Frampton rest. And because of that, I'm going to go with Leo Santa Cruz here by decision. On the undercard of this bout, the return of Mikey Garcia. Was a 2-year layoff now?
Can I make a quick point?
Oh,
Mike,
yeah, quick counter, guys. Quick counter.
Two attributes where he can. Number one, better footwork, and number two, better counter puncher.
But can he stop the motor, though?
To beat via those facts, and 3 by power. That's how you beat a volume pressure fighter.
We'll see.
Do you think he has that? Do you think he will have that power moving up in weight?
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he fought almost like a Terence Crawford, Mike, just using lateral movement throughout. It wouldn't surprise me if he did that throughout the fight.
Okay, let's move forward right quick. Final bout we're going to talk about here. The return of Mikey Garcia. He's fighting Elio Rojas, junior welterweight. I will just give my points quickly. I'm not worried about whether Mikey Garcia looks great here. My question is he going to be solid? I just want him to be solid, to look decent, because he's had such a long layoff. He's moving up from 30 to 40. There's going to be a period of adjustment here to the new weight. I know he's had all that time off, but still he hasn't been fighting at this new weight. And I just want to see how much rust is there. That's my main thing. Is I don't need spectacular from Mikey Garcia. I just need him to basically get the job done here, so he could look better in his next fight. Going back up the ladder. Gus, Daniel, your thoughts?
Well, like I said, this is an effect of fight where it's true. Mikey Garcia just has to look good. It's a long layoff. And it's not a layoff that injures, a layoff of his own making. So he first has to prove to people like me that he actually has some motivation. Because to me, from what I've seen, I think he wants to be more. He wants to be a cop more than he wants to be a boxer. He maybe have to be in boxing now because he knows that's where he can get the most money. But I want to see a motivated Mikey Garcia because the Mikey Garcia that left the ring 2 years ago, you could make an argument to it being top 10 pound for pound. So he has a good way to go to reclaim that. But he may be stepping into a division where, like I said, depending on what happens with Terence Crawford, there's going to be some free belts. Hell, let's face it, he even tried to get into the sweepstakes to who could take the belt away from Terry Flanagan. But apparently Felix Verdejo has won that little war. But to talk already of a title fight, that shows you the confidence of Mikey Garcia. All he has to do is actually prove it that he can actually has it still in the ring.
Gus?
Mike, I can't even get remotely excited about the return of Mikey Garcia. You know, you're talking about a man who, you know, in a protracted lawsuit, you know, trying to extricate himself from an agreement that, you know, that he sat down, negotiated, and should have abided by, but for whatever reason, he thought his value was far greater than what they contractually had decided, and hence demanding sort of purses in excess of what was contractually stipulated. So and somebody who's been away from his profession for that long says to me that it's a man who clearly doesn't love boxing. So for what reason is he back? Is it a case of replenishing his depleted bank account? Probably. You know, fair enough, we see a lot of boxers do that, so I'm not sort of naive to say that I've not followed other boxers who've done it in the past sort of 30 years, so it is a long layoff, but, you know, he was a super talented fighter, no doubt. I'm not dismissing his in-ring accomplishments and what he did and the level of opposition who he beat as well, but from my understanding that he was very keen to have Yuriorkis Gamboa in his first fight back at lightweight or even a catchweight. I think Mikey said that, you know, Gamboa was not keen to have that fight, which I find quite interesting. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. You know, Rojas is a pretty sort of stand-up tough guy, but I don't foresee much problems in Mikey sort of overcoming him.
I think we're going to start to shut the show down on that note. We had a bunch here. A lot of them had to fortunately leave. So I will go to you first, Gus. For folks who want to talk the sweet science or music, let the folks know where we can pick you up. And by the way, I sent that 48-page report. It should be, I sent it to you via Skype, so you can check it out after the show ends.
Cool, thank you. Thank you, Mike. It's always a pleasure to be on this magnificent show with you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, folks who want to talk boxing, you can hit me up on Skype or on YouTube. I'll soon be launching other platforms. Platform is Corruption in Boxing.
Down your copy of the Inscriber for folks who want to talk boxing, the NBA, specifically the Miami Heat. Let the folks know where they can find you.
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at Rockets99. You can find my work at the Inscriber Digital Magazine. I said I want to give a shout out to my fellow boxing writer Peter Clark. He just had a video interview with Mikey Garcia. It was a really good interview. Please check it out. And like I said, on Sundays or Mondays, you can hear me and Joe Francis from 4 Boxing News. We have our own show. We talk about the fights. And Gus, I want to send an invitation to you for this Sunday because I definitely want to see what we're going to see from Santa Cruz and Frampton. And who knows, like I said, we may get the formal news of who's going to take Terry Flanagan's belt, which excites me.
Okay, indeed. You had Gail Falcanthala Community News on here earlier, award-winning now. Falkenthal Community Digital News. If you want to check her out and talk box or anything else, you can check her out on Twitter at PRO San Diego on Twitter. If you want to check out Scorsese, you can check him out on YTBC. Low Place hashtag MLPF. You want to check him out there. Also, you can check him out on Twitter at I think it's Low Place Friend on Twitter. My Low Place on Twitter. If you want to check out Dilltown, you can check out on Twitter at Dill Patriot Jo, I think. Live. I'm sorry. J Dill Patriot on Twitter at Live7Jo, or you can just check him out on Dilltown on the YTBC, where he does a lot of videos and talk boxing and whatnot. If you want to check out Jacob Rivera, you can find him on You can check him out on Twitter at Let me check right quick. You check him out, JTRAM23. You can check out Jacob there. Writing for Jab Boxing. If you want to check me out, of course, Brother JR at Brother JR76. You want to check out all things pound for pound boxing. Just go to the blog page P4P Boxing Report. .wordpress.com. Just look into the right of the blog page. You'll find links to find us out all over Facebook, G+, Twitter, the Tumblr page, where to check out the live YouTube channel. We can check out the Pinterest board. Check us out via RSS feed if you want to listen to us there. If you want to check us out on Stitcher, Flipboard Magazine, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, Player.fm, as well as the email address P4PBoxing, P4PBoxingRPT at gmail.com. On the next episode, we will do a recap of Santa Cruz and Frampton. We will do a recap of Stevenson, Thomas Williams, as well as Mikey Garcia's return to the ring. And we will do a preview of Andre Ward, his return to the ring. On the 6th, he's going to be fighting Alexander Brand on HBO in his own town of Oakland. For Gail Falkenthal, for Jay Dill, for Jacob Rivera, for Scorsese, for Gus from Representing Boxing, Daniel Carpio, the Inscriber, I'm your host, Michael. This has been episode 135 of the Pound for Pound Box Report. We will see you next time. Good night.
Peace.